Welcome to another episode of Retrospective Gaming. In this episode, I am reviewing Aeon of Sands, The Trail. This is an indie game that came out recently, and I've been waiting to play this. This is a dungeon crawler that emphasizes on story and choice. Just a heads up, there will be minor spoilers in this review. No long intro this time, let's get to the review. The story starts off in a post-apocalyptic desert. Cities are protected by big domes that look like, as the game describes, a huge salad bowl. You, Santini, a humble clerk from the city of Pentella, is sent on a mission by the city's council to find a missing caravan that was supposed to reach Broomtown and discuss a treaty to keep the peace. Without this treaty, a war is possible. You're set out to travel beyond the city's dome to explore and find out what happened. And that is how Aeon of Sands starts. I enjoyed the story. As expected, there are plenty of things that get in your way while trying to find this caravan. It's a hostile desert, so damn hostile that you better not step outside without some protection. Have no headgear and see what happens. That's right, you take damage. This is a harsh world filled with abandoned dome cities, glass cities, different tribes, underground ancient ruins, xenomorphs, ghosts, humans, and other things I can't describe because they're just that unique. It sounds pleasant, doesn't it? I was pleasantly surprised by the story and dialogue. It's serious, but it's also very funny. The main character is a sarcastic, snarky, funny motherfucker. And he's very pessimistic. Now that's my type of guy. The dialogue has a lot of humor and fourth wall moments. He will acknowledge the fact that it's a game and nod his head at the player. And this type of storytelling can be divisive. Some people don't like fourth wall moments and the character acknowledging that it's a game. It takes him out the game. It takes him out of the fantasy that they're trying to get into in a certain game. Now, me personally, it depends on how much it's used. If it's oversaturated, then fourth wall moments can be a pain in the ass. But I felt that this game wasn't excessive with it. It's there, but it's not really too much where I'm like, okay, that's enough. It was enough for me. I personally like it, but just saying, it can be divisive. It depends on someone's taste. I remember traveling through this abandoned city, confused and running around trying to see what I missed. I was frustrated. I was just running around trying to click every wall to see what happened. I was lost because I didn't pay attention to some certain things early on in my playthrough. And then all of a sudden, I click on some drawing on the wall. And what do I see? A text box pops up. The character, Santini, said something. And what did he say? Well, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't exactly say this, but he basically said that the drawing looked like shit. And for some reason that was hilarious. Think about it. I'm in this fucking abandoned city. I don't know where I'm going. I have to find clues for this caravan. It's getting really serious. I'm running low on water. I'm running low on meat. My character is barely surviving. And all of a sudden, I try to click on this art on the wall to see if it's a clue, and it's not a clue. It's just a main character saying that this drawing's fucking horrible. Santini, he's not a chosen one. He isn't trained for this. He is really a comedic figure. Just a clerk filled with self-deprecation, anxiety, doubt, and pessimism mixed in with a bunch of snark. And it works. Through the game, I love his character. I love his commentary. I love how he interacts and how snarky he is with everyone else, even some of his companions. I remember I went into this one area and I ran out there, and his comments was him saying, "Do I die in this cave? Or do I go outside and die in this desert?" But it's not all self-deprecation and humor. It also has a fair share of depressing and somber moments. Santini reminds me a bit of myself. I can relate to this bastard. You send me out in a humid, hot-ass desert with barely any food, water, no booze, no weed, no ecstasy, nothing to get me high, no plants to crush up in the sea if I get fucked up, and you expect me to find some goddamn missing caravan when I have the worst attention span and I hate following directions? I would be doubting myself and cussing myself every damn time I see a new area. I would fight one of the abandoned domes. I would lose, but I would punch that giant salad bowl out of frustration before I fucking melted to death in that desert. And I'm a marathon runner, so I'm used to being in humid heat. And let me tell you, It's not fun. So you put me out there, you're damn right I'm self-doubting myself, and you're damn right I'm being a pessimist. Santini, that's my type of guy. My first playthrough was somewhat short, and I wasn't rushing. I explored and took my time, but I reached one of the endings faster than I thought. But I was caught off guard. To get the most out of Aeon of Sands, multiple playthroughs are required. I expected this to be really linear since it's a dungeon crawler, but like the developers say, they made it to be non-linear, and it's influenced by classic game books, and it shows. Even from the start, within the first 15 minutes, you have a choice, and what you choose determines if you get a companion or not to start off with. Different dialogue choices during interactions lead you to picking different bits of the story. Once you alienate someone, you can't go back and try to redo it. It's closed off for good. What you say and what you do, or sometimes don't do, determines what companions you can pick up, and they aren't just there for combat. They can play a significant part in what parts of the game you see. A situation's dynamic can change completely just because you have a certain companion, because of their personalities affects it in different ways. And even with 2.5 playthroughs, I still didn't get every companion, so there's a bunch of replay value if you want to see everything. I do have a gripe with the story. Even with the different endings and paths you can take, I felt that the pacing was off near the end. It felt a bit rushed. No matter what playthrough you're doing, companions you have, paths you take during that playthrough, once you get to this certain area that's near the end of the game, to the end of the game, I feel that during that time, it just gets a bit rushed, like they're trying to get to one of the endings. And I felt that some of the things that went on during this time could have been explained more, and some scenarios should have had more slides to explain what's going on to give more background on the situations, and just been a bit longer. And the same thing goes with some of the other tribes and some of the companions. Now, each companion, they do have their different backstory, and I do like them, but I felt like with some of them, it could have been a bit longer, or their actions could have been explained a bit more about why they do this. And some of the other tribes should have been explained a bit more. It's an interesting world. They created something that I've played 2.5 times, so I'm definitely interested in it. I just would have liked to see it explained more, but these are very minor gripes. Overall, I enjoyed the story. I liked the humor. There's a nice variety and different scenarios based off what you say and who you have in your party. And for a dungeon crawler, that was a pleasant surprise, and there's a surprising amount of depth than what I was expecting. So even with my minor gripes with it, I enjoyed the story, the characters, and the world that they created. So as I said before, those were minor gripes. It didn't push me away from the game. I enjoyed the story. Aeon of Sands is a dungeon crawler. You will navigate your party throughout large areas looking for traps to avoid, pushing buttons and levers to open certain areas, and doing puzzles. This is what you would expect from a dungeon crawler. Now, you know me, I don't bullshit. It's been a long time since I played a dungeon crawler thoroughly, so I'm not the best at them, and I don't have to lie and say I'm good. Sometimes I have a really bad attention span, and it shows. It's important to pay attention to every space and every tile. Buttons and switches, they fit in very well with your surroundings. They may be a bit miscolored or just a tiny bit off on a wall somewhere. So you really have to see it, which means you have to pay attention to every tile. In order to get through certain areas, you have to play with different combinations, which means sacrificing some items to keep something on the floor pushed in like a button somewhere, or playing with certain switches in certain areas. This is what you have to expect and do. But how was the execution? For the most part, pretty good, and in some areas very well. One of the things it does very well is giving you a reason to stay and explore these areas, optional and the ones required to progress through the story, and that's a hard thing to do, especially for a dungeon crawler. The majority of your time is going to be spent in enclosed large areas, and when I first played this, I was worried that these areas are just going to be very linear, just straight to the point to get past the story, and that's it. No secrets, no optional things you can do, no side things. I was just worried it was going to be too linear, but thankfully I was proven wrong. A lot of the places you explore have depth, and it's easy to miss out on some of the areas within an area. You could forget to get a pickaxe and explore more and open new paths to find armor, equipment, whatever. Or you could easily go into one area and forget to find certain pieces that altogether make a symbol so you can open up a whole new part of the map. These places are optional, some of them, and it just opens up a whole new experience and you can miss out on a lot. That's why I love exploring, and that's one of the things that this game does well. Since it has multiple endings, it gives you a reason to go back. When it comes to puzzle and area design, I think the developers did a good job. I can tell when I'm playing this game that the developers were really trying to figure out a way to stump players because it showed. Now, some puzzles are straightforward and easy. Push a button on a wall, press levers to open certain doors. Very easy to spot, but I had a couple of moments in the game, and we can all relate. You know when you're in a certain place, and whether it's due to puzzles or enemies, you're just trying to desperately find a way out. You get stuck, and you spend minutes, sometimes hours, running around the same parts over and over again, frantically trying to figure out if you missed a certain lever, or you didn't kill a certain enemy, or you checked the auto map and you try to see if there's one area that you didn't explore, and you check it over and over again and you see that you explored everything, wondering what to do next. It almost drives you to the point of rage quitting. Your eyes, they're so strained, tired, you feel frustration all over your body. Suddenly, you feel like you're 40 years older. Your body's understanding the frustration in your mind, and you're starting to, at the very least, get tired, if not hurt all over. You start seeing double, because you're staring at the screen so much and staring at the certain areas, it all looks the same. Well, I had several moments like that in this game, and I'm glad. I don't knock that against the game. It's not because I felt that some things were unfair, it's just because some of these puzzles were very clever and tough, and I like that. And motherfucker, I still gotta get one companion by finishing this one dungeon, and even after 2 fucking playthroughs, I still haven't figured out this dungeon. I like a good fair challenge, and Aeon of Sands definitely has that. When it comes to the combat, this game has a different way of using magic. Santini can learn different elements of magic, and this requires him getting certain items so he can not only learn, but change the elements of magic whenever he wants. For example, you can use different things like elemental magma, air, water, and more. But this game is different from others when it comes to mana use, and there's a different dynamic at play. You have certain bars that you have to keep an eye on, and as long as you have enough stamina, you can use as much magic as you want. The moment you keep trying to use magic when that bar is at its limit, your character will lose health. And it's easy to not pay attention to this because you're in a fight or you're trying to run around, healing yourself, whatever, and your character can die easily by using magic when their bar is over the limit. This is not like some other games where the mana bar goes down and once it reaches 0 you have to find a way to get it up, but you're not allowed to use it again. No, you can still use it, but you can't stress yourself out because once that bar reaches the limit, you're going to start taking damage. So it becomes sort of a strategic thing of, can I take this hit if I need to use some magic spell when the bar is at its limit? Can I do that? It's like a seesaw act. How much can I use this bar, and how much will it affect my character once I reach that limit, and is it worth it or not? It's a different way to use magic, and there's a nice amount of elements that you can change around and experiment with, so it adds to the replayability. It's different. I liked it. I didn't have a problem with it. Now in this game you don't level up. You just get your proficiency percentage up, and you do this by using certain types of weapons or magic. And I'm neutral on this. I wasn't expecting there to be a lot of skills, and the skills are only related to combat. I just wish there were skills related to something you do outside of combat. Something that may relate to your character's charisma, or chances of getting certain random encounters, or just anything like that. I would have liked to see more skills and just other ways of doing stuff. Me personally, I like leveling up, and I like putting my skill points into something that I like, and maybe using trainers, but I understand this is a dungeon crawler, so it doesn't necessarily have to have that. It's not a big problem, but I'm neutral on this type of way of getting your characters to get stronger. Speaking of random encounters, I am a fan of the way that you traverse the world. You're a big board piece on this map, and you move around area to area, city to dungeon, whatever. And you don't have to worry about random encounters in terms of fighting. There aren't any of those, but you do get some little random encounters here and there where it's different parts of someone's story, or you just might run into something that has nothing to do with it. Something related to a cutscene. It's not related to combat, so if you don't like random encounters where you have to fight stuff, you'll love this. The biggest obstacles and challenges to me came from some of the puzzles and dungeon layouts, going through long areas with multiple floors, running out of healing items, trying to figure out puzzles, trying to survive, avoiding traps like the ones that make you go through a hole in the ground. Those aren't that bad. And the most problematic traps in the game, the holes in the wall that spit out fireballs. They do a lot of damage. Make sure you use your magic to help you with that. Trust me. But when it comes to the battles themselves, when it comes to the combat AI, the enemy layouts, the enemies themselves, while there is a challenge, you do get mobbed by multiple enemies. Some of the enemies can one-shot you or two-shot you. Even near the end, I was running to a certain type of enemy that could kill my whole party in 1 or 2 hits. They are there. There's a challenge. But the game also has enemy AI issues and balancing issues. As long as you have enough space to move around, and you don't even have to have a lot, just a little bit, you can easily maneuver your way around a lot of enemies, and this makes fights easier than they have to be. As long as you have a little space, you can easily back up a couple spaces, hit your enemy, back up, run up some stairs, hit him again, without ever taking a scratch or barely taking any damage. And this is because the enemy movements, and especially their attack patterns, are very slow, and the player can exploit that, not due to a glitch, but just the game's AI itself. It's very easy to just run circles around the enemy, hit them, run back. As long as you're fast on the keyboard, you're gonna have an easy time with a lot of these fights, and it didn't have to be that. I think they should have worked on the enemy AI a little bit more, make their attack patterns a little bit faster, or make some of them very clever where they can pull you back into a fight, they can freeze you, or they can make you stumble, because a lot of these fights can just whip their ass easily. Now overall there is still a challenge, because there are some fights that are very hard, and it's not a total walk in the park, but the enemy AI should have been a bit better. And when it comes to certain weapons, they're just OP. The crossbow is OP. When you shoot bolts at enemies, they can do a lot of damage, and you can spam those bolts very quickly to do a lot, and you don't have to have a high proficiency level. Even with bosses, all I had to do was just spam my crossbow attack over and over again, and as long as I had enough crossbow bolts, I was doing a lot of damage. But thankfully, throughout my playthroughs, I didn't find a ton of crossbow bolts, so they're not overabundant, because that could have been a huge problem. But when it comes to certain types of spells, they're OP too. For example, there's just one character that's strictly a magic user. You're going to see him in the footage, so I'm not going to say his name. He has this spell called Hide, and when you use this spell, the screen goes black and white, and you're invisible to enemies. They won't see you, they'll walk around confused, and during this time, which I believe is like 10 seconds, you can hit the enemies as much as you want and they won't do nothing. They'll just sit there because they can't see you. The problem is that you can use this spell a decent amount of times before you have to calm down and not use it because your bar is too high. And this leads to even boss fights, you can just go through it easily because all you have to do is spam Hide and just run up and attack whoever you want. This should have been nerfed. I'm not saying that the combat is so easy that the game is a walk in the park. I'm just saying there are problems with the AI, and especially I believe some of their movements, and there are some balancing issues. But overall, there is a good challenge there, especially if it's your first time playing, or you haven't played a dungeon crawler in a long time. Combat could have been a bit better, but it's not horrible. Now, one of the best things about the game is the art direction. I love it. It's old school. It's gritty. It doesn't use too many bright colors. I just love the art in this game. It just looks fantastic, and the music fits too. Despite some of the enemy AI issues and balancing issues, and I do wish some of the areas were a bit more fleshed out, despite my issues with the game, it's still a fantastic game, and I do recommend it. If you like old school CRPGs, and especially dungeon crawlers, and you want a game that isn't going to hold your hand and does have some challenge to it, a good amount of challenge, especially with the puzzles and dungeon layouts, give it a shot. Thank you for watching. If you want to leave a comment, do so if you please. You know how to get into contact with me. Have a great day. And the next review is ELEX.